Hello everybody, Sente here, and welcome to my first video back on the board. This one is all about the 3-3 invasion. So I've been out of the game for a long time, but you know, the one thing I thought I could count on, the one thing I thought would stay stable in the time I've been away, is the 3-3 invasion. I thought, you know, at least in all the complexities of Go, this would never change. White would still invade, black would do this, get a lot of thickness on this side of the board, white would play somewhere else, it would be okay. Now, that's not the case. Now we have a million ways to handle this corner. We have ways such as simply extending. We have white responding with the knight's move. We have black playing the knight's move. We have attachments. We have fighting variations. We have fighting for Sente now. And this makes invading the corner a lot more complicated, especially for newer players that might not be as familiar with Josekian shape. In light of that, I wanted to go through all of the variations that are most commonly played in the 3-3 corner, so you can just take this video, study it, and you'll be completely equipped to handle whatever your opponent decides to throw at you. Or maybe give them a few surprises of your own. Let's get started. So, white invades your corner. What do? First step, don't get angry, don't get annoyed. This is simply a statement. White is saying that they would rather have your corner than the outside. It's up to you to turn their invasion into something you can profit from. And profit usually comes in two forms, either direct territory or influence. The question is whether or not you can get Sente out of the deal, and whether Sente is important enough to risk having not as thick of a wall. If we can see in this standard variation that almost every intermediate player knows, black is going to extend and keep white confined to the corner in whichever direction is most profitable for black. So if black stone is here, black would want to build the wall this direction. However, if black had a stone here already, black would probably want to build in this direction because it's closer to black stone, and black can build a stronger framework later on in the game and get a lot more potential. Now, let's say you didn't care about Sente, but you wanted the corner, right? Let's say the corner was more important to you than getting influence. This can be due for a few reasons. Maybe you're playing a very sort of influential game, just throwing some stones on the board here. You don't have a ton of framework to work off of. Maybe all of your stones are low. Maybe white has strength in this sort of area of the board, and your wall will do absolutely nothing. In this case, it would be better for black to get territory instead of getting influence. So the first variation I'm going to show you guys is the I want territory variation. So this will give you territory, but also give up Sente. So these are the trade-offs that you need to think about. Starts out with the standard, leading white in whichever direction you want white to go. And Hane. Haneing at the head of two stones is a very strong move. Standard flow of the game. White's going to respond, and black's actually going to double Hane here. The double Hane essentially says, I'm willing to sacrifice one of these two stones because what I get in exchange is more valuable. If white just connects here and lets black protect, this is a very bad result for white. White is crunched into the corner, and black stones are now veering and looking towards white's territory and potential, threatening to undercut the entire thing. If white takes a move to defend, black has a lot of options here and always has a place to run back to sweep white's territory out or to expand in that direction of the board. White would not want to allow this to happen, so white's going to need to fight this. The best way to fight it is the most obvious. This Atari right here. Black is going to defend, and then white is going to Atari the stone. If white plays anywhere else, keep in mind, black has a ladder. Remember, in our beginner series, ladders and nets are very important. Always be on the lookout for them. There's another situation where threatening the ladder makes white forced to capture the black stone. In response, black Ataris this stone, which forces white to capture here. And then black extends, keeps the corner, and white gets a Panuki facing the other direction of the board. So not only is the stone dead, but black is very thick on the outside. This is a good result for black. But Sente is another profiting reward. Sente in and of itself can be worth something. So the question becomes, do you want to be the first to play in an open area of the board, or would you rather have a thick wall that no one can ever attack forever? If you'd rather play somewhere else on the board, this is where you get into the more advanced variations. Now let's say black is fine with having influence, but really wants Sente. Black can simply extend like this. White is forced to try to keep from getting surrounded by black. So white's going to sort of play a knight's move here to jump out from under and try to get a little bit of influence and effect on the outside of the board. This gives black opportunity to do whatever else that they want to do. If white doesn't accept this and goes somewhere else instead and says, these two stones are probably fine, well, this turn is actually huge. White's power on this part of the board is completely destroyed. This is Sente, because black will kill. So white has to play here. So not only does black still get the first move somewhere, but now black has all of this incredible influence to work off from, and white's corner is now 4 points, which is super sad. White can't play away here. So white's going to play here. Let's say white plays here first, threatening to undercut, black defends. Now white plays here. It's entirely possible for white to double Hane. Now remember what I said, the double Hane intends to sacrifice one of those stones so that you can Atari the other side. So black is going to Atari this white stone. White's going to counter Atari. Now think about this phenomenon and recognize the similarity between this tree and what we'd explored before when black double Hane'd in the corner. White Ataris, and now white has the Tsuji of the automatic capture. So white's gained a huge corner and completely destroyed black's wall. So black's only choice is to very depressingly make a small, crunched kind of group. It may be sixth line, but given the wall, whose goal was to expand across the whole board, this isn't really advantageous. Not to mention, now white is the player that has the wall facing this part of the board that now white can build off of. So that is probably why if white does decide to extend here, black needs to Hane down. The way that advanced players find a way to play away without giving up too much is to leave the position just like this. Haneing once and then playing away gives white the opportunity to, if they want, play here. But this is not nearly as devastating as getting that Hane at the end of two stones and swooping their way across the entire bottom of the board. Like that. This is worse than just letting the one stone be, accepting that white might fight this later, and taking an advantageous move somewhere else along the board. Now let's say you want a bigger wall and Sente. You can do the same trick that we did with the 2-stone double Hane and do a 3-stone double Hane. White's going to eat one of these stones, like that. If you're starting to pay attention, you're noticing patterns, right? You see the double Hane doing the same thing every time. White takes a Panuki, black defends, and gets a forcing move on the outside of the board or somewhere else on the board. In this variation, black can use the double Hane to make a bigger wall and still get Sente out of the deal. The downside, white gets a Panuki now. Corner's a little bit bigger, influence is a little bit stronger, but black does have a bigger wall in exchange. So still a playable position. Now here's a slightly more advanced move. Remember when I told you guys that Haneing underneath, if the opponent responds, can lead to really devastating cuts and double Ataris on those 3 stones right here? We played through that sequence earlier in the video. Black can do this also. So if black Hane's here, white responds. Black actually gets this cut here. White is, if we remember from before, with this cut, if white doesn't do anything, black is threatening to play here and eat these 3 stones, right? If white plays here, black is going to fill. White needs to capture. Black can counter. And then get this stone in a ladder. We saw the ladder before, actually, when black made the wall and crunched white in previously. White's best way to keep a handle on this situation. Atari here. Black's going to Atari. White takes the stone. And black connects up. So now black has influence across the top and the side. White is completely crunched in. Disadvantage, black loses Sente. All of these moves and all of these sequences are coming at a cost. Either you gain Sente but don't have as strong a wall. You lose Sente but have a really strong wall with peeps if white feels so bold. But so long as you're understanding the strengths and weaknesses, you can play from most of these positions. Now we're going to explore the famous Knight's move, the move that's revolutionized the amateur Q playing world once all the computers started doing it. All right, now let's talk about the Knight's move. In many situations, the Knight's move can turn into the same sequences we discussed earlier. Imagine if white were to extend this way, black would extend, and now all of a sudden we have the same situation as we had before. Black can pretty easily get Sente or keep white in the corner like so. For this reason, white likes to play a little bit more dynamically and aggressively by attaching here. Now, black could simply say, you know what, I'm cool not having Sente. It's okay. I'm just going to force you to respond here. I'm going to respond here and keep following and building my wall. You can take Sente. It's all good. Now remember, if black wants to keep Sente, you can play away in this position. That's possible too. Remember, in Joseki, there's many ways to devolve a situation back to a situation you already studied. And that's the key to remembering Josekis. Not trying to remember a bunch of different sequences, but remember the commonalities that tie all of these sequences together. Now, black can extend in this situation, stay ahead of white, staying ahead of your opponent. This will force white to follow, in which case black can devolve the situation into the same thing we had already discussed, where loses Sente, but gets a big wall. For white, a little bit of a more aggressive way of doing it is to play this move first. This ensures that black has to respond, otherwise black would get cut apart, and then white can make sure that they keep Sente with this series of moves. Remember, all the situations that we had talked about still hold, because in the majority of cases, this situation can devolve into what we had previously studied. Now, if black wants to fight, which sometimes people want to fight, black can Hane here, in which case white will respond. It's a mistake for black to do this. because we tried to do the double Hane capture Panuki trick we had learned earlier, but we see that this doesn't work because white can turn. So the best thing to do here is to extend. Remember, when things start to look messy and you start to get into a fight, your primary concern is keeping your groups strong. Sacrificing a stone is okay as long as all of your groups are strong. So this will leave cutting points behind, many cutting points behind. Here, here, and here. And there's a move here even. If white does decide to cut, let's say here, remember, it's important to make strong shapes. This will force white to become stronger. If black plays away, white has this move. Black can extend. White can extend, threatening the ladder. Black has to continue to capture. And now black has the tombstone to Tsuji. We learned this to Tsuji a little bit earlier. I think I had another video that talked about the tombstone. It's really important to Tsuji. Basically, white threatens to capture 1,000,000 stones, whatever white wants to do, forcing black to commit to capturing these 2 stones, because it seems like that's the only way for black to live. When in reality, white has this Atari, take this Atari, take this Atari, fill. And now, white's essentially captured this entire clump of stones. With this sequence here, white ensures that black can't take away the last liberty. White has to spend some time filling. And white wins by 1 liberty. So it's super important to not strengthen your opponent. If you can strengthen your situation without strengthening your opponent, you're in a better position. So black's best move is to play the diagonal here. It still threatens to make a good shape. It threatens to make a Panuki here. But it doesn't push white into strengthening the stone. This seems really complicated, but it's using basic cuts, basic ladders, and basic concepts of keeping your stones strong, just like we reviewed before. So I hope this gave you some insight into the 3-3 invasion. Now, before I leave you, I want to sort of go through the main topics that will allow you to memorize and understand all of these josekis. I'm not going to be talking about specific sequences, but more the fundamental concepts you need to remember that will guide you through the 3-3 invasion. Concept number 1, you can play away from a 1-stone Hane. If we remember from this situation, black can play away here. White's gains are not that debilitating if white were to Hane at this stone. Concept number 2, the double Hane sacrifices a stone. In the Hane sequence of the 3-3 invasion, any double Hane will prompt the opponent to counter Atari and eat one of the Hane stones. Your job is to make sure that the forcing moves you get can provide a large enough impact somewhere else on the board to mitigate that. Concept number 3. Sente and strength are often trade-offs. In a lot of these situations, we see that the stronger you make your position, the more likely you're going to lose Sente. This is the simplest example. If you want to keep Sente, like we said, this is the best way to do it, but black's wall is not nearly as strong. But for a fast-developing modern game, this is good enough. Another principle to remember is, if you're in a fight, make sure your groups are strong. If black plays away, white can do this here and play here, and everything is peaceful. However, white can choose to fight by straight up cutting this stone. The primary reason that josekis are made is it keeps all of the groups as strong as possible. We want to make sure we extend. We don't want to play away from stones that are in too much danger, and we want to make sure we read ladders and we read nets. Here, white needs to make sure to defend against the ladder or net combination of this 1 stone. And black is going to try to use diagonals and panukis, potential panukis, to make their stones as strong as possible to brace for the upcoming fight. We don't see direct links. We don't see direct attachments that create cutting points. We want to play away and keep our groups strong. And the last principle that I want to take you guys to take away from for this video is that many Joseki positions are related. Remember, this position, how we got here, is also seen when black plays here and white plays here. It devolves into the same thing. Many Josekis use the same kinds of positions, but either facing a different way, using a different number of stones, and what seems like a really complicated, huge series of neural nets actually devolve into a few basic principles. So I hope that this sort of demystified some of the 3-3 shenanigans that we see in professional Go. I hope now when you sort of look at the 3-3 invasion and you see a more complicated thing, you understand that you can diffuse the situation easily. You can take Sente simply, and you can take things that were very complicated and turn them into simple understanding of trade-offs. Do you have any sequences you particularly like? Do you want to hear more about a particular variation? Have you met a variation that has completely stumped you and you don't know what to do? Let me know in the comments. I'm happy to try to answer any questions to the best of my ability, and you can definitely read Sensei's library for a more in-depth understanding of these variations. So play them out yourself, try to see what you can see, try to make strong shapes, and try to see the similarities in all your positions. I hope that this video can help you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the board.